Most of us have looked at the cruelty in the world and wondered why heaven stays so quiet. We watch corruption thrive, we see innocent people suffer, and we ask why God refuses to step in. When we ask those questions, we usually feel a twinge of guilt. We wonder if bringing our deep frustrations to the Creator is a failure of belief, or the most profound expression of it. This minimalist map highlights the kingdom of Judah between 610 and 605 BC, sitting isolated in a volatile region. Internally, the people were steeped in moral decay. Externally, a massive, terrifying enemy force was mobilizing directly on their borders. It is in this high-stakes environment we find the prophet Habakkuk. He is not sitting quietly. He is agitated, pacing the floor, and actively interrogating God. In chapter 1, verse 2, we read his exact complaint. "How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen?" He is crying out against unchecked violence, accusing God of remaining silent while the kingdom burns. Habakkuk represents the voice of anyone who has ever felt trapped inside a broken, seemingly unjust universe. He is a faithful man driven to the edge of despair, demanding an answer from heaven. The remarkable thing is that God actually answers him. But the response overturns Habakkuk's assumptions about how divine justice operates. This time-lapse of gathering storm clouds mirrors the reality God reveals in chapter 1, verse 5. God tells Habakkuk to watch and be amazed because he is actively orchestrating the rise of the ruthless Chaldean army to judge Judah. This creates a contradiction that Habakkuk cannot reconcile. A holy God is utilizing a pagan nation, an enemy more wicked than Judah itself, to achieve his ends. Most people would retreat in fear from an answer like that. Habakkuk does the opposite. He doubles down on his interrogation. Looking at this balancing scale, we can see Habakkuk's theological rebuttal from verse 12. He places God's eternal holiness on one side and the chaotic evil of this impending enemy on the other. To Habakkuk, the scales cannot balance. He refuses to let the contradiction slide. As the scale morphs into a watchtower, Habakkuk stations himself there. He resolves to stand at his post and wait for God to defend this inconsistency. True biblical faith does not ignore difficult contradictions. It demands clarity, taking its hardest questions directly to the sovereign Creator. God speaks a second time, and this final verdict settles the debate. He begins by instructing Habakkuk to carefully document the vision of what is about to happen. This weathered clay tablet captures the gravity of God's command to write the vision and make it plain. It is a permanent decree, meant to be carried and understood by anyone who reads it. Etched into that message is a central, enduring operating principle for human existence. The just shall live by his faith. God draws a sharp contrast here. The invading enemy is proud, his soul is corrupt, and he is ultimately doomed. But the righteous person's survival depends on a deep, sustaining trust in God's promises. Then, in chapter 2, verse 20, the interrogation reaches its climax. God ends the debate by asserting his unrivaled supremacy over the earth. As we pull back into a vast, motionless void, we feel the heavy weight of God's final command. He orders the entire earth to fall silent before his holy temple. The divine interrogation ends as the realization of God's sovereignty overwhelms any further human argument. The silence of that moment echoes far past the borders of ancient Judah, providing the vocabulary New Testament writers would later use to explain the nature of belief. Paul anchored New Testament theology here, quoting Habakkuk in Romans and Galatians to build the doctrine of justification by faith. This rests on two pillars: faith saving a person eternally, and faith sustaining them daily. We see the reality of that endurance in Habakkuk's personal resolution in chapter 3. His bleak external circumstances haven't changed. The enemy is still coming, but his internal state has shifted from accusation to adoration. He closes his prayer by declaring that the sovereign Lord gives him the feet of a deer. It is an image of spiritual agility, a strength that allows him to traverse treacherous, terrifying terrain without stumbling. The practical takeaway for anyone reading this book is liberating. When you are thrown into suffering, or when wicked forces seem to prosper, it is permissible to question God, so long as it is done with reverence. When we recognize that God is firmly on his throne, paralyzing despair can give way to a humble, resilient strength. We learn to trust his timing, gaining the ability to tread safely upon the heights of a broken world.
Hello everyone! I warmly welcome you all. If you subscribe to my YouTube channel and like my video, I will thank you from my heart. Thank you so much!